Welcome back, everybody. This is the Thought That Counts podcast. I am Michael Abello here with my buddy Kevin Cruz. This is episode number 2.
And we back, guys. For everyone that heard the first podcast, thank you guys. We're still getting used to this whole process, but I promise you we're going to be getting better every time. So be looking out for the next episodes coming forward.
100%. We went from a park, now we're actually inside, so you cannot hear other people's discussions and fire trucks passing by, so on and so forth. But to recap the first episode, if you did not listen, we went through the discussion of why people are hesitant and reluctant to chase their own dreams. What are the hesitations behind that? Our own dreams that we've pursued throughout life, what we went through, so you can kind of have a backstory and get to know us a little better and see how we personally have took that leap of faith. So the episode today, we're going to discuss the main reason why we believe most people don't chase their dreams, and that is fear. So that is the title of today's episode. We're going to go pretty much jump right into it and speak on our own biggest fears and how they've changed from childhood to adulthood. That is a very good question.
No, definitely. There's a lot to think about when you hear that question. And fear, fear, everyone has a different meaning of fear, but basic, it's something that prevents people from maybe wanting to do something that they've always wanted to do, accomplishing a goal, so on and so forth. So from childhood to adulthood, it's a long time. So for me, my biggest fear, I think it's not knowing my full potential. Like, at the end of my life, being on my hospital bed, saying that, what if? And not knowing that I've achieved my fullest potential.
Did that change from when you were a kid to now, or is it the same underlying, like as you've grown up, that's just expedited and grown?
No, that's definitely grown. I would say maybe the past decade that thought kind of came to mind. But when you're younger, you have like silly fears.
Correct.
Like, oh, I don't want to go in the dark because of the boogeyman, or oh, I don't want to do this bad. I don't want to get in trouble because my parents are going to get mad at me, and I'm not going to go get that toy on the weekend, or they're not going to buy me this shoe or these clothes. So the fears definitely change throughout life, but as of lately and over the past couple years, I feel like it's about the truest potential.
There's kind of like 2 points I want to hit on, one from childhood and one now. So, not to branch off on too much of a tangent, but your biggest potential, do you think you'll know when you like eclipse that, or is that going to be the same thing, like an ever-growing thing? Because as you learn, as you get older, you get more knowledge, so on and so forth. Is that going to be something that you just continue to push? Or is it somewhere where like you're going to be like, okay, I've kind of hit this peak and I need to go to another one eventually, but for right now I'm good?
No, that's a good question. I think for me it's a never-ending process, and that's why you have goals. That's why you have like milestones that you hit to at least measure your progress. So like for instance, jiu-jitsu wise, they have the measurements of belt levels, right? So like you hit blue belt level, but you know that there's way more belts after that, and they tell you that when you hit black belt, it's just the beginning. So in that sense, it's like the belts kind of measure your progress, which is something you're constantly seeking. And then when you finally hit that black belt level, you're restarting your journey again. They say that's when your journey truly starts. So that's how I kind of look at it too. And I kind of owe that to jiu-jitsu for giving me that mindset of, okay, keep working progressively forward. Have your goals, try to meet them, and, reevaluate yourself when you finally hit those milestones. And then as you start moving up the ranks, just believe that growth continues and it doesn't stop. So just like everything else in life that I do, I'm not looking at just one result or one destination. I'm really just focusing on the continuous progress throughout the process.
Do you think that's more mental or physical or both?
For me, I'm big, and this is something that has changed over time too. You know, from childhood to adulthood, I used to think everything had to be physical. You know, you think that you always have to get your hands dirty and do that, which has merit too. But for me, what you can really focus on, even without putting in those hands-on work, is you can focus on the mental side. You can always work on the mental, and your brain will keep going while your body stops and your body quits. So that's how I look at it now. It's like there's just this never-ending wanting to progress and get better and focusing.
That's even harder than physical.
Oh, definitely, 110%. The mental, it requires a lot more thought, right? A lot more effort, and like we talked about in the first podcast, is self-awareness. And making sure you're self-aware of what it is that you want, taking the steps to reach that point, and letting yourself know that there's still so much to learn.
Because a lot of people get uncomfortable once you start like peeling back, like the onion metaphor. You start peeling back the layers. It's just like, I don't know, man. What's
it's uncomfortable.
Under? Yes.
It's uncomfortable to grow.
But once you know, like, oh, this is really not that bad. Like, again, that's adapting, which is another thing we're going to get into. That's adapting to it and being like, all right, this is actually a good thing. Let me try it again.
Yeah.
And that just snowball effects down the road.
No, you're 100% correct. And that's kind of a little peek into my fear and, how I look at life now that I'm a lot older. I'm 29. And, I plan on continuing this process all the way through.
Okay.
So, with that being said, how do you feel? Like, what do you feel about the question that we pose? Your biggest fear, and how has that kind of changed through your childhood into adulthood?
My biggest fear as a kid, personally, I would say is not a rational thought of a kid to have, honestly. My biggest fear as a child was to grow up and be exactly like my dad. So it's a very hard, punch in the gut for me, because given this history and the story with my dad, he was abusive. I'm not going to get into the whole spiel, but as a kid, I was just like, man, I can't do that. There's two avenues I have. I'm at a fork in the road. I can go right and be exactly like him, or I can go left and try to be something else and branch off. So that's what I did as a kid. I can see my brother-in-law being a good dad. I can see role models that I have or friends that I have being a great dad, and they're like, oh, this is literally what you do. Like
taking pieces from all of those experiences and hopefully integrating them, in your life one day.
One of my good buddies, his name is Jason. He's been with his wife for a while, and he has now.
Shout out to Jason.
Yeah, he has 2 kids, both little girls, and he's a phenomenal dad. Ben, another good friend of ours, phenomenal dad. I'm just like, I can do that. They give the example and set the example. I'm like, I can see it, and if you can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And I see the other side of it. I already know the other route. I already know what's down that rabbit hole. So.
That's a good way to look at it. You're not making the experience a negative experience. You're taking it and being like, okay, this is how it happened. I know now what not to do. I know now what not to be as a man. And no one's perfect, but I think that's a key step into
100%
progressing and changing for the better. Right?
Absolutely.
All right. So the second question is, what was or is the root of those fears? I think that for me the root is really my upbringing for these fears. And
I completely agree.
Like I said, earlier, when you're younger, you have really silly fears. I think the worst thing I used to think when I was younger was, man, the world's gonna end. Right?
The sky's gonna fall.
Yeah, I was I remember I was I think between 13 or 14, and they would talk about 2012, or
Oh, what's the Mayan calendar one?
Yeah, the Mayan calendar.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's 2012.
Is it 2012?
I think it was 2012. So I would always think about that. I'm like, man, that's it, 2012, and it was still like early 2000s, but the fact that there was a date, it's like, okay, I guess that's when life ends. So let's just make the best of it. Which was such a irrational way to think as a child, but you're kind of gullible in that sense. Um, but no, I think my parents, they were really good about supporting me and mainly encouraging me. And this is like there's two different sides.
Correct.
It's like they held me accountable for the things that I I didn't do, and kind of helped me understand, like, okay, next time you try to do this and whatnot, to focus on what you can do better. It was always positive reinforcement.
Positive, yeah.
So in a way, I don't think there was a lot of fear as far as like those really crazy fears of not doing well, not being a good person, because that was just instilled from the beginning. From the beginning, like I owe a lot of this to my mom. Like my dad was working a lot, and my mom was really like the rock at home. She always instilled in me, be good to everybody, because you never know. When something went wrong, or let's just say I didn't do well in school, she would never make it seem like it was the end of the world. She'd always give me room to work on something, and also support me and help me.
Should show the growth opportunity.
Yes, yes. Like she wouldn't just say, "You did this wrong, you're in trouble." She would say, "Okay, this is what you did wrong, right? I'm not gonna punish you, but I want you to kind of think about what you did wrong, and then if you need help, if you need advice, then that's when I'll be there." So for that support, like that's invaluable. And now,
especially as a kid, wow.
yeah, no, and I got those lessons early on, and I'm super grateful now that I'm a lot older, and I try to tell her every time I talk to her, because she's back in Guam, I'm here in Texas, and I just always just try to reassure her that her lessons early on really helped me up until this point.
Especially as an adult.
Yes. But yeah, the fears, not much crazy fears when you're younger. It was more of like just disobeying your parents, not doing the right thing, getting bad grades, and like I made a joke about that 2012 thing. That was like the biggest fear in my life at that time.
That shows exactly how much of a child you are when you're a kid, for sure.
And then you see a
That's
trailer,
the biggest fear.
and then you see the trailer of the movie, and then when the movie finally comes out, you watch it, you're just like, man, you're speechless, because you're like, this is how it's gonna end.
Yeah.
Like
The world basically blows up.
the world basically goes up, and that's it. So that's kind of my experience of where those fears rooted.
Yeah. Mine would be the exact same. I mean, whenever you're a child, most of your development and who you turn out to be as an adult is stemmed from whenever you're a very young age. But again, like as I've become older and as I've grown into adulthood, like I just never, for me, like as far as not reaching my full potential, like I'm just scared as hell to be broke again, to like be poor. Like every time I go into the grocery store, all right, I have to count. The cheese is $1.25.
Yeah.
The water is 75 cents. I only have $10 in my bank account as a kid, or like in my pocket, yada yada. It's like, I can't do that anymore, dude. Like I just can't do that.
So that kind of got you prepared like early on.
Correct.
Which
or like being on food stamps, like, all right, we only got $150.
Oh, yeah.
You got to make it last. All right, you got a bargain shop. This is what this is. This is what that is. Okay. Like I've been through it. I know.
and
how
hey,
it
I'm
is.
not afraid. I'm not ashamed to say it either. Like I was on food stamp before. Like my mom was, and she, as soon as she could get off, she got off it, because she's like, it was about working.
Correct.
It was about not just kind of, I don't want to say leeching off the system, but if you're willing and able,
Yes.
then you should be trying to make your life better.
Correct.
Instead of just kind of sitting back.
Sitting back and letting everything like come to you in
Yeah.
some sense of the word.
Yeah.
So,
So that's the root. That's basically the root of your fears.
For sure.
What was one of your like funny, like kiddish fears that like it took a while for you to get over?
Whenever I was a kid, like getting like like pants at the pool, like the community pool. Like I would tie my drawstring super tight, or like in Tom's River in New Jersey, like we had this one community pool that I went to as a kid, and everybody would be there. Everybody from the school.
All the who's in the school.
Exactly. All the like the cute chicks you had a crush on, all the cool kids, quote unquote, and I'd just be like, all right, tie these really tight. If Johnny or Don or whoever comes up to try to pants me, they're on. I'm good. Because that did actually happen to me in school.
It did.
Yeah, my pants fell down in like 4th grade. No underwear on.
Yeah, that's kind of your fault, I think. But
I wore a swimsuit to school. I dressed myself. My mom was like, "Bye, have a good day."
you know that also it's cool how you talked about the fear of an experience, right? And how it also kind of correlates to the root of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the experience of your life and how you grew up, the things that happened to you at a young age, and how sometimes you carry those fears with you, right? Even though they don't really affect you as much anymore, you can still remember the feeling you had
100%.
when you were scared, or when you were worried about something, or when you were about to get in trouble.
Yeah. One thing though, like as far as the sports aspect, and I know you can relate to this, like playing on the basketball team, and like the first time you ever get the ball for the last shot. First time I ever got it, I missed it. I was like, oh man, this sucks.
Now that you look at it, do you feel like that was would you have rather...
Like I could literally replay the scene in my head, like step by step, going through the motion, where I stepped, how I caught the ball over here, where I should have placed it, how I should have turned my shoulder or anything. Would I change it? No. Because I knew the next time I got that ball, there was no way it's not going in.
Okay, that you basically answered my question. Because you always look back and you're always like, man, I wish I could have changed this. And we talked about like blessing in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of touched that on the first episode too. So what age do you feel like you figured that out? Because I know you touched base on your family and not having it like quite an ideal situation. Did you like stumble upon that on your own? Or did you have like a mentor or maybe a family member to say, hey, you made a mistake and here's how you can fix it? Did you ever have that like growing up?
Not really. My mom did it occasionally.
Okay.
But,
so you had some form. You had some form of it.
She did that occasionally. For me, like I could kind of put those pieces together in middle school, as far as like with sports and things of that nature. I could be like, all right, I didn't do this. Like, it's tangible for me to see it. Like I didn't practice this enough, and it showed in the game. All right, go back and practice it again. This worked, and that's good. I don't have to focus so much of my energy on that. I can do it on this instead. It started to become more evident once I got into high school. Pretty much around like 10th and 11th grade. So 10th grade, I was still in Florida. There was an incident that happened with my mom, and my sister was like, hey, and she started to try to take more of like a motherly role. She got married for the first time, and she would just make little jabs. Be like,
she was trying to make up for that kind of lost opportunity.
Correct. You should do this, or you should do that. And then when I eventually moved back to New Jersey to live with my aunt and my uncle was like the only real father figure I had, and that was only for about a year. Like I would see him when I lived in New Jersey as a kid occasionally, and like I would look up to him. He was still a great dad, and like 2 cousins. But like he taught me how to drive a car, reinforced like going fishing, enjoy your family,
doing
hang
mail.
Exactly.
Mail things.
Go hunting, go to the cabin, drive dirt bikes, so on and so forth. And he really, and my aunt as well, they kind of like took me under their wing. Was like, hey, they tried to give me more direction and like how to navigate certain areas of life. They really did that around. So that was like 16, 17 years old.
Oh, so you had it like well into your high school.
Yeah. That's
when you started getting that kind of role model.
And then like especially when I joined the military, man, I I got really lucky
Oh
when I was 18 and I tried to be a SEAL. Everybody, and then I turned 19 and that's when I left. Like everybody that I was in class with, they were all like 26, 27, 28-year-old grown men, like our age now. And I was an 18, 19-year-old kid fresh out of high school, and they were like telling me what books to read. Like, this is what you think about if you, like, if you're feeling down, if you're tired, the option of quit never crosses your mind. You think about positive affirmation.
Yeah.
Think about your happy place, what you want to achieve, why you started in the first place, so on and so forth. So, yeah, that helped me out at 18, being in the military tremendously.
Yeah, no, that's, you know, that's something I can attest to and really preach about is, you know, the value of mentorship.
Oh, dude.
Whether it's, you know, someone older than you, someone your peers, but if there's something you don't know and there's someone out there that does, if you just seek out that knowledge or that mentorship, like, man, that can,
It bridges a gap.
it bridges a gap, right? Like you said, you were 18.
Yep.
You guys were 26. Imagine that. All the tools that they were equipping you with is so many years ahead of your time.
All I did was ask questions. Like, I was 18 when I first learned about 48 laws of power. 18.
Yeah, I think. I don't know if I was 18 when I saw the book, but it was like early 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like 48 laws of power, John Maxwell, Tony Robbins. I was fresh out of high school when they started trying to teach me about that. And granted, it didn't sink in like it does now.
But you're at least exposed to it.
Correct. I was like, oh, there's another way to play this.
Yeah.
Like, again, it goes back to me being a kid. There's a fork in the road. You can go left or you can go right. There's a totally different avenue to play, and it's a much brighter road versus this one.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's crazy. You know, and you hear that a lot about the military careers. Like they really instill the discipline. You know,
Yes.
and it correlates really close to like martial arts as well.
100%.
You know, so we're the great thing is we're still getting that same practice, right? In a less harsher form, I guess.
Correct. We still have control over our days and what we want to do.
Yeah, and it just makes me think, like, now that we're talking about all this fear, you know, how to overcome and adapt it, where did your fears come from? You know, from childhood leading into adulthood. It's exposure.
Oh, 100%.
It's exposure. Like if you're not aware that something's there, then why be afraid of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's so many forms of that exposure, like media, environment, you know, people.
That's a damn good point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exposure. You know, whether it's good or bad, like that's really the root of where things, I feel like they all start out.
Where it stems from, yeah. That's a very good point. Because
It just dawned on me, and I was like,
Yeah.
exposure. I was like,
Because
if you didn't learn about those things at 18, how many more years down the line would it have taken for you to, you know, read these books or learn those lessons that you had these mentors or these good human beings, you know? Okay, this is a younger guy. We can help this guy. Let's give him all the tools that he can use. You know?
and that's pretty much what they said. They were like, dude, you're a kid. You have this massive opportunity that most kids or most even people our age don't have. Take advantage of it. But no, man, you're right. Because if you're not exposed to it, you have no idea.
Yeah, you're basically in the dark about it.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, bro. It's cool to kind of recap on, you know, your past and, you know, where these things, like you said, the fork in the road,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not all forks in the road are bad.
No, not at all.
There's not always a light side and a dark side. It's just choices you make,
Correct.
right? And
Correct.
my true belief is that life is gonna end up where you were supposed to be all along. If you continue, right? I think if you just stay where you're at, obviously you're not going to move
Yeah,
forward.
you're not gonna have.
But you can go in many different directions, and somehow you're going to end up on the path that you desire or you were meant to be on. And that's another thing. I feel like we're all born with gifts, and we're all meant to do something in this world.
That goes back to, this episode and the last episode. You have this dream, but the biggest thing that's going to stand in front of that dream, right in your face, fear.
Fear.
Because I don't think most people ever find, or they think they do, but they probably don't take that leap to going on that path. And the main thing that's in front of it is fear.
I don't know why the first thing that comes to mind when I think of fear, right? Like if I can close my eyes and have this visual of what fear is, it's as if it's like an invisible barrier or this invisible wall,
Yep.
right? It's like,
I think of it as like plexiglass.
yeah, it's like, okay, it's there. Why am I afraid to walk through it, right? And then if you face that fear, like I had an experience where I jumped out of a plane. I was so scared to jump out of a plane, right? It was such a spontaneous thing. I was scared to jump out of a plane, and building up to it, like you just have so much anxiety. You're thinking of all the what ifs. Oh man, I'm scared. And then the moment you jump out,
It's amazing.
it's like the most euphoric experience.
Oh yeah.
And after that, you're like,
What was I afraid of?
fear? What? And then you question yourself. You ask yourself that question: what is fear? Because you're like, I'm alive, and
I'm happy.
I'm happy. I feel accomplished, and I face my fear. So, granted, things in life are different, but it's just a small
That's a
little.
phenomenal metaphor to end on. Perfect metaphor.